But still, nothing we could have done to save Zoe in this situation, so... The question is, does he have a way to stop this from killing him? It actually does not require much from him. He needs a Frostbite spell. Hey everyone, Raptor Spank here. Today we have another episode of On the Grind, the show where I cover a deck I'm playing in Ranked. I'll break down the deck, a couple of flex spots, and some basic mulligans. Then we'll put the deck through some Ranked matches and review how we do afterwards. This week we'll be looking at Zoe Plaza. Basically this is a kind of combo-y, mostly mid-rangey deck. If people haven't seen this, it's a Celestial deck, or Celestial Shell, that uses new cards like Starry Scamp, combined with early drops like Spacey Sketcher, but also combines it with some decent mid-game threats like Solari Sunforger, Radiant Guardian, and it has the late game of Starshaping / Aurelion Sol, and then you use a lot of Demacia tricks like Single Combat and Concerted Strike as our primary removal, but we have access to things like Hush and other damage pumps and stuff like that, and Plaza as well gives us Challenger to deal with removal. So this is much more Zoe focused than some Zoe decks can be. I mean, Zoe Lee Sin is very Zoe focused too, but generally speaking, Zoe's the most important champion in our deck, as opposed to like Aurelion Sol is not as important. It's a really good late game drop for us, but there's a reason that the numbers are what they are in this deck. Basically, you're just generating a lot of value off Celestials while using fairly well costed units. And Grand Plaza is just there as sort of an added bonus that makes your stuff even bigger or gives them challengers so you can force blocks the way you want them. It's just a really good value deck that gets the most value you can get out of a lot of basically good utility cards, essentially. Now we'll go over the list. Let's begin with the champion package, which starts with 3 copies of Zoe. As I mentioned, this is a lot more Zoe focused than some Zoe decks can be. I mean, it's still not the most important thing that she lives, but generally speaking, if she can keep generating you value, that's going to be really, really beneficial, and the deck is going to get a lot out of that. You would love to level up your Zoe so that it starts sharing keywords, and also getting Behold as opposed to Super Cool Star Chart is phenomenal, but we have a lot of things that benefit from Celestial cards, so Zoe's ability to just generate the Celestial cards through Super Cool Star Chart means even if she dies, we can usually use that to basically set up a really dominant late game. Her champion spell, Sleepy Trouble Bubble, is a lot less relevant. Honestly, I think most people will tell you her champion spell is pretty weak. I've used Paddle Star, I think, exactly once while playing this deck, but I've used Sleepy Trouble Bubble for the stun more than once, but it's still, the champion spell doesn't do much for our deck. That's just kind of, if you have it and you've got nothing else, you'll sometimes use it, but the basic focus here is just an elusive threat out of Zoe that can get started very early and keep generating you all these cards through Super Cool Star Chart and potentially later Behold. So it just keeps your hands full, and it generates you all these good value things. Next up, we have 2 copies of Aurelion Sol. So the last Aurelion Sol deck that I covered on this series was Peak Control, and in that deck, the best card you could ever have is Aurelion Sol. You couldn't, like, if I could have put 4 Aurelion Sols in that deck, I probably would have. Here, that is not the case. Aurelion Sol is not a primary win condition. He's a great thing to curve into, but pretty much any deck is going to have a hard time spending 10 mana on a single unit without putting themselves at risk. So we don't have a ton of Aurelion Sols, and we're not really looking to do the Sky's Descent, but since we have a heavy Celestial sub-theme, it is actually possible for us to do Sky's Descent, but generally speaking, Aurelion Sol's just there to generate more cards off of his round start and in his play trigger, and then just be a huge spell-shielded threat. Especially if we can level up Zoe, then Aurelion Sol gets a lot better, because if we can play Aurelion Sol, then play an elusive, and give Aurelion Sol elusive, he becomes a very legitimate threat on his own, and Spell Shield does make it kind of hard to remove him, while Fury can also be strong, but he's not the core focus of this deck. This is just one really good late-game bomb that's going to continue generating card advantage for us, which is the reason why we're only running 2 copies of this. Now let's take a look at the Landmark package. This starts with 3 copies of Grand Plaza. As I mentioned, this is here is just like a great utility value card. Now, it is very important to what the deck does, but unlike some other decks, like if you play the Plaza Scouts deck, that one, you're going to feel it a lot more if you don't have Grand Plaza. This is a deck where it's not necessarily required. You don't have to hit Plaza to feel like the deck is powerful. It's really, really strong with what the deck does, especially if you can get a bunch of Starry Scamps for free. But generally speaking, this is just here for value. We can get a lot out of this. This can be great for dropping something like a Zoe and giving her a damage buff. It can be really good for basically stealing us wins with something like a Great Beyond, getting that extra power. It's just got a lot of value for what our deck is trying to do, and that's why it's definitely worth the include. But we're not focused on Plaza. I wouldn't necessarily call this a Plaza deck as much as something like the Plaza Scouts deck that I mentioned, where you really need Plaza to feel like your deck is doing what it needs to be doing. We're just a deck that runs it because it's a great utility card that we're going to benefit heavily from. Now let's look at the follower package. This starts with 3 copies of Spacey Sketcher. This is the best deck for Spacey Sketcher, and it's the best Spacey Sketcher has ever been. We'll cover that a little bit more when I talk more about the Starry Scamp, but here it is just a great utility card. We have lots of cards we can pitch, but you can definitely throw away a real card. You don't need like a gem off Mountain Goat to play the Spacey Sketcher. Just basically, you play it, discard whatever the least relevant card is for you, and then you want to hit, hopefully you hit something like Serpent, but basically anything you can find off Spacey Sketcher will likely be relevant in this matchup. Messenger can draw you more cards, which is great to make up for the fact you discarded something. The Charger is a big threat on its own. The Stun, Crescent Strike, I have actually used that so many times in this deck. It's really strong. This is a deck where it can be as powerful as possible because of how quick we get off to the races sometimes. Also, the Spell Shield deck, the Spell Shield card, I think that's Moonglow. We actually can get a lot of use out of that card because we're a Zoe deck. Using it to protect our Zoe can be massive, so that's a great find in a lot of cases. We have a lot of expensive cards too, so the cost reducer is great as well. And we can also get a little bit of value out of Equinox in the right matchups too. So basically anything this can find us is going to give us some sort of value. Even I forgot about the Elusive. The Elusive is great if we level up our Zoe, and sometimes it is my most reliable way of actually getting the Zoe Elusive trigger on all my units. After that, we have 3 copies of Mountain Goat. This is just another great value card. I mentioned that we're kind of a mid-rangey deck that's just basically trying to get the most out of a lot of utility cards. Mountain Goat is exactly that. This is 3 power for 2 mana. That's incredibly powerful, especially into other mid-range matchups. And then as long as it can connect even once, we're going to get a gem out of it. And there's a lot of things we can do with gem. We can discard it to Spacey Sketcher for the Invoke. We can use it to buff the power on something. We can use it to heal. The buffing power is actually much more relevant than you would expect because we can use that on something like Zoe that flies, that now we can start getting a ton of damage through with Zoe, because otherwise she's not really a huge damage output. She's just a card draw engine, but we can actually use Gem to make her much more of a threat and really run our opponent down a lot quicker. But this is, all in all, a very utility-based, great on-curve card for our deck that can put a lot of damage into our opponent very quickly if they don't have much that they're doing in the first couple of turns. From there, we have 3 copies of Starry Scamp, and this is one of the most iconic cards in the deck, and probably the big reason a lot of people might hate this deck is that it costs 2 less, i.e. it costs nothing if you behold a Celestial card. One of our best things we can ever do is Spacey Sketcher turn 1 with a Starry Scamp in hand. Like, I've hit someone for, I think, the most I did was like 5 damage on turn 1. Actually, I think I got a 7 damage turn 1, which is pretty much a living the dream as much as you can. You play Spacey Sketcher, discard a card, get like the Serpent, and then you play Starry Scamp, Serpent on turn 1. Like, that's the craziest turn 1 you can have in this game. Like, just straight up. Like, Starry Scamp creates such incredible plays for you that it's insane. And you can even do more damage than that if you're holding like 3 Starry Scamps and a Spacey Sketcher, and then you pitch whatever you draw, and you get Serpent. Like, this deck goes off fast when you have Starry Scamps. But you don't need Starry Scamp, but it's definitely the key to the aggro package of this deck. This deck can run people down incredibly fast, which is why, again, Crescent Strike can be so good for this deck, is that if you manage to get a bunch of Starry Scamps earlier, or even just like Spacey Sketcher into Mountain Goat into Starry Scamp, like, that can do an incredible amount of damage very quickly if your opponent doesn't have a lot to do, or if all they've done is play 2 units and you can Crescent Strike that. This deck can run people down like nobody's business, and Starry Scamp is critical in that fact. From there, we have 3 copies of Solari Priestess. This is another enabler for Starry Scamp. We can pay 2 for Starry Scamp, but we would prefer not to, and things like Solari Priestess allow us to continue generating Celestials in hand that will make the Scamps free, essentially. So since we have this heavy Celestial theme, the Priestess is just a great include. I've gone up and down on this card many times, but this is definitely a deck where Solari Priestess does not feel bad, and it can be really good with something like Plaza, because now you've made a 2-3 with Challenger, and that makes Priestess substantially better, because now you can always throw her away just to pull blocks the way you want to force damage through. So she gets a lot better when you're running something like Plaza, and she can, of course, get you all of the really great value cards that we've always wanted her for, things like Comet, Sisters, etc. You know, we can even use everything else is actually usable in this deck. Since we have a heavy Celestial theme, the Traveler can be great. The Challenger off Warrior can be great, especially with a leveled up Zoe if we want to give Challenger to everyone. It's such a great value card, and you get so much more out of it in this deck than you would get in pretty much any other deck thanks to Plaza. From there, we have 3 copies of Solari Sunforger, another new card. Basically, this is just here for a huge amount of lifesteal. It's a huge body. I mean, a 5/4 for 4 is incredible on its own, but the fact that it gains lifesteal on the first turn you play it, as long as you play it first, makes it incredibly powerful. And especially if you can combine this with something like Plaza, it can really help to run down your opponent very quickly. I mean, they're not going to want to block it because it's a 6/5 with Plaza, and even without it, it's a 5/4, so most things they block it with are going to die without killing Sunforger. So they're not going to want to block it, but they're also going to have to block it because of how much damage it does. So that's really potent, and the fact that it gains you up like 5 health or more is very potent, and it basically means that while a lot of our units are weak, we do well into aggro because we have so much life gain. Which brings us to our next card, the 2 copies of Radiant Guardian. This also gives us a lot of great lifesteal, and it gives us tough. And if we can play this with a leveled up Zoe, if we can trigger her and play her with a leveled up Zoe, like, the game is over. We just gave tough and lifesteal to all of our units. Like, that's insane. But just generally speaking, she's a great value card. Our units are going to die, and especially with Grand Plaza, we can make that happen in order to trigger Radiant Guardian, so we can play her and get that benefit. And then once we do, she's going to be very hard to deal with because she has tough and she has 5 health. So even Go Hard, for example, Pack Your Bags isn't going to kill her. So, yeah, Pack Your Bags and Go Hard's not going to kill her. They're going to need something more than that. They're going to need, like, double Pack Your Bags, which is going to be very hard, or the Vengeances and Ruinations to deal with her. So she's a great answer for decks like that. It's just a great value card. The problem is that you do have to trigger her to really get value out of her. If you're just playing her as a 5-mana 4/5, that's not going to be great. As you see, Sunforger brings the same stat line for less mana, and also has a much easier to trigger condition, so she's not the best card, but there's a lot of value we can get out of her, and that's why we're running 2 copies of her. Finally, we have 1 copy of Eclipse Dragon. I know some people play more copies of this. The problem is I don't want my deck to be too top heavy. It can definitely be a problem in certain matchups and all that, but Eclipse Dragon is insane. I mentioned this in Peak Control, and it's still true here. This card is really great, and we get value out of both halves of it. If you can trigger Nightfall, you can get a bunch of cards in hand, which is great. We love that. This is definitely going to be a case, unlike Peak Control, where we're probably going to look to Daybreak it more often than Nightfall, but that's still going to give us great value. If it makes Aurelion Sol cost 8, for example, that's going to be insane. And in fact, it will make Aurelion Sol cost 8. I mean, we could have Celestial units that can also benefit from this, but if we have Aurelion Sol, combining this with Eclipse Dragon, that curve is insane. Eclipse Dragon into Aurelion Sol is exactly how you want to make Aurelion Sol actually playable without being a huge risk. So every part of this card is great. It's a 7/7 with Fury on top of that, so it's a huge body for what the cost is. And if you can play that with a leveled up Zoe, you just gave Fury to all of your units. It's just so much value you can get out of this card. So it's definitely worth running, but I keep it to 1 just to keep my curve a little bit lower. That brings us to the spell package. So first off, 3 copies of Hush. I love Hush. I really do. I liked it a lot less when it created fleeting copies in hand, so I like where they have Hush now. And just in general, I do not like Fiora decks. I really do not like Fiora decks. I hate feeling like there's nothing I can do about it. So I love Hush because it gives us a great answer for decks like that. There's plenty of other great times to use Hush. Hush is great against Lee Sin. It's great against Zoe. It's great against all sorts of decks. But I really love it for being able to deal with Fiora and not have to worry about Fiora. So I love any deck I can shove Hush into, and so 3 copies is just really, really good. There's a lot of value we can get out of Hush, so that's great. Then we have 3 copies of Pale Cascade, a nice, good pump spell that can save things from some removal, and if we can trigger Nightfall, it can keep drawing us through the deck so we're not running out of cards. It's basically just there to, I'd say more often than not, I use it to save my own units. But you can always use it to push a little bit of extra damage through. There's some risk in that, but sometimes your opponent will leave themselves vulnerable for things like that. There's times I've won the game because Great Beyond didn't have enough damage on its own, so you have to Pale Cascade it, stuff like that. It's just a great value card that can draw us more cards or just save our units in an important moment. So that's why we're running 3 copies of it. Then we have 3 copies of Single Combat. This is our basically premier removal. Grand Plaza sort of works as removal too, and we can often get things like Comet and Meteor Shower as well, but I would say Single Combat is our #1 form of removal, and there's times we can kind of break the symmetry with this, not exactly, but if we, say, play something with Grand Plaza so it has an increase in temporary stats, we can always use Single Combat to use those extra stats to kill something, and possibly not even lose our own unit. It'll probably take damage, but with the boost to stats, we might not actually lose it, so it's a great way to get value off that, but essentially it's just there for dealing with things that we absolutely have to deal with and we can't ignore, so that's why we have 3 copies of it. From there, we have 2 copies of Concerted Strike. Same thing, except this is one-sided. This is a great way to deal with very large things, or with board states where we don't really want to lose any of our units, but we have to deal with one of our opponents. It's a bit costly, which is why we only have 2 copies of it, but there's a lot of value we can get out of something like this. So with all of our life stealers, this can be boosted life gain without losing our life gainers. It can also be used with Fury units to make them bigger. That's actually kind of relevant because we do have Eclipse Dragon and Aurelion Sol, all of which have it, and we can generate a lot of Fury units too, stuff like Great Beyond. So that's actually more relevant than you'd think, but generally speaking, this is our big unit removal. This is for things like Hecarim, who's pretty big right now, stuff like that, and other big units that we're going to have trouble dealing with, like Eclipse Dragon from other decks. It's just our big removal spell. And then finally, we have 3 copies of Starshaping. This is just primarily, this is actually a win condition in our deck. I win, I want to say, probably the majority of my games through a Great Beyond or something similar, and Starshaping is what gets us there. So this is really a win condition more than anything else, but the fact that it has so much life gain staple to it too is really good. Generally speaking, I'm going to use it on the Nexus more than anything else. We don't have a lot of units that we want to heal because we have a lot of things like Starry Sketcher and Starry Scamp and Mountain Goat who you're pretty much never going to heal them. They're going to die in combat fairly easily, so you're almost never going to heal them. But I have used it to heal something like particularly Radiant Guardian or Sunforger in the right spot. So there's a number of places where you can use this to heal a unit, but generally speaking, this is going to be healing the Nexus and hopefully getting you some massive payoff. Now let's talk about a couple of flex spots for the deck. Big thing you can make here is that this list is very flexible. There's a lot of different people who are running this list, and everyone's got a different take on it. You could drop the Radiant Guardians and go 3 Eclipse Dragons. I've seen that a lot. You can play with numbers a fair bit with certain things. You can go down Sunforgers, up other things. You can go up Aurelion Sol, down something else, maybe even drop the Eclipse Dragon, although I probably wouldn't do that, but there's a number of places you can play with numbers. You can go up the Concerted Strike, for example. But another big thing I've seen people do is mess with the champion package a little bit. So you're always going to run the 3 Zoes, but you can do anywhere from 1 to 3 Leonas, for example. Right off the bat, you could drop something like Radiant Guardian or the Eclipse Dragon and put 1 Leona into the deck because we're not using all 6 champions. And I've seen a lot of people do the 1 Leona, 2 Aurelion Sol, 3 Zoe thing. But there's a lot of people who also just drop Aurelion Sol entirely and go all 3 Leonas. That's decent too. If you're going to go that route, you probably want to bring a few more Daybreakers in. We have a lot of them, so it's not hugely relevant, but then you start to bring in some conversation about some other stuff, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Generally speaking, she just basically lowers your curve and gives you a little more control through the stun, and Morning Light can be very powerful in a deck that has potential for a lot of elusives like our deck can sometimes do, or just have a lot of units early on, so that's pretty strong. But generally speaking, you're probably just dropping her with Daybreak to stun something and buy yourself a little more time. Some other changes you can make. I've seen people run 3 copies of Egghead Researcher. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's a really weak body, and most people who are running it are dropping the Mountain Goat for it, and I think Mountain Goat generates so much more, not to mention, I mean, there's always the concern that Fearsome Aggro could come back. There's no reason to say that that deck's bad right now, so I think there's a decent possibility we'll see that come back, and Egghead Researcher is going to be a lot worse for that, but it does generate you a huge Dragon Follower in hand. I mean, the smallest that's going to be is like a 4/4 for 4, which is obviously very potent, so it has that value to it, but it's a very weak body. So I personally prefer Mountain Goat, but this will keep your hand full and keep you with a lot of threats. So there is some decent reasons to run it. As I mentioned, you might want to consider more Daybreak cards if you're going to go the Leona route. So then replacing Mountain Goat with Solari's Shieldbearer becomes much more fair, I'd say. So obviously you're getting the same stat line as Mountain Goat because you're getting a 3/2 for 2 for the long run, but you have this added benefit that the turn you play it, it's probably not going to die. It's going to be a 3/6 that's going to be incredibly hard for your opponent to deal with, especially on turn 2, so it can probably force that 3 damage through, so it's not strictly worse than Mountain Goat, even if you're not running the Leona variant, but generally speaking, I wouldn't really consider making the swap unless I am going to be playing Leona. Another big thing you can do that I've seen people do is instead of the Radiant Guardian, you can run 2 Grizzle Rangers. This is really strong. I don't think I need to explain why Grizzled Ranger with Grand Plaza is insane, but if you haven't seen that interaction, it's crazy good. So you get a free attack off the Grizzle Ranger, but you basically play him. He's a 4/2. You kill something on the opponent's side because a 4/2 is going to, with Challenger is going to have a huge threat to your opponent's units. And then once Grizzle Ranger dies, he summons a Badger Bear, which is then also going to get buffed by Plaza and also gain Challenger. So it's basically 2 very powerful units that work as great removal without you losing stuff, because the Badger Bear's probably not going to die at that point. You throw Grizzle Ranger into the big thing and kill it, and then you get this other unit that's even bigger than Grizzle Ranger. And yeah, it doesn't have Scout, but we're not really a deck that's built to benefit from Scout. It's just that it benefits greatly from Plaza, which is why you could consider running it. I prefer the increased life steal, but this is definitely a very legitimate change you can make. Grizzle Ranger is very strong with Plaza, and it can definitely do a lot of damage to your opponent. So it's a very fair change to make if you want to go that route. A couple of spell changes you can make. These are all one-ofs, pretty much. You can play with those numbers a little bit, but I've seen all 3 of these get played. Moonlight Affliction being probably the more interesting of it, but we do have Eclipse Dragon and Aurelion Sol, so there's an argument for going Dragon's Clutch. As I said, I don't think we're really an Aurelion Sol deck, so I would prefer to avoid Dragon's Clutch. But if you really like Aurelion Sol, you like the Eclipse Dragon, or you really like that whole Eclipse Dragon into Aurelion Sol curve out, you can run Dragon's Clutch as another way to hit that. You're almost never going to give Dragon allies +1/+1. We do get stuff like Great Beyond where it could benefit you, but you're almost never going to do it. But you could do it to basically more guarantee that Eclipse Dragon into Aurelion Sol curve if you really like how that plays. So it's a decent pick. If you're going to do stuff like this, you probably are going to look to either shave a Hush, or you're going to cut down on Concerted Strikes, maybe cut both Concerted Strikes for a number of things, go up Eclipse Dragon, something like that. Moonlight Affliction is another very interesting thing to go with. You're almost certainly going to want to keep Mountain Goat if you're going to go Moonlight Affliction, in my opinion anyways, because the big problem with Moonlight Affliction is that if all it's doing is silencing 2 enemy units this round for 5 mana, it's kind of not great. I mean, there's definitely points at which that will be good, especially against decks like Scargrounds, for example, but you're really going to want this for the Nightfall they can't block this round, and it's going to be very hard to actually benefit from that at burst speed. You can always play a unit and then Moonlight Affliction, but since this is a very expensive card, it is going to be hard to pull that off. But the best thing that I could see is something like using super cool Star Chart or a gem and then Moonlight Afflictioning to stun their units and open attacking. That would be really strong. So I think there's a good argument for Moonlight Affliction, and I'm probably underrating how good it is as a play unit then Affliction, but generally speaking, I think it's a little too hit or miss for me to include it, but it's a very neat card, and I know some people were asking when the expansion was teased if anyone thought there'd be a use for this card. This is probably one of the best decks to run Moonlight Affliction. And finally, I've seen this by a lot of people, Alan's Q, for example. A lot of people are running the One of Judgment. I really don't like the risk. that comes with Judgment. It's a very good card, and we have a lot of spell shield units like Aurelion Sol and the Great Beyond that could be used with Judgment, and there's a number of moments in which that would be really relevant, because that's basically the best board wipe we're going to have. We could have the Sky's Descent, we could have the Obliterate enemies with 3 power or less, but Judgment is another way to kind of ensure a board wipe. It's just I really don't like how risky it is. Generally speaking, I find that I'm killing people the turn that something like the Great Beyond or Aurelion Sol comes down, so I don't necessarily need the added backup of having Judgment often, so I don't generally see the advantage of it. And while a lot of people are going removal light, with the exception of Go Hard, or a number of decks have been doing that, it's still so incredibly risky to use a Judgment with something that doesn't have Spell Shield. Yes, you can get Spell Shield off of Zoe or Spacey Sketcher and give it to something and then Judgment, but I don't know. I just find the card to be a little bit too risky, so I prefer Concerted Strike over Judgment. But if you want to go Judgment, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to take. Probably in a case like that, you would go down, I'd say maybe go down both the Concerted Strikes at that point and go up Judgment and then up maybe Eclipse Dragon or up an Aurelion Sol just to get another thing to benefit off Judgment. So that's what I would do if you want to run the Judgment route. Now let's talk quickly about some mulligans. Basically speaking, I have yet to find a matchup where I really don't want Spacey Sketcher plus Starry Scamp in my opener. If I have the option to keep both, I'm going to keep both, because that guarantees that you get to play both of them on turn 1. Same goes for turn 1 Zoe. I pretty much keep that into every matchup. Even in Go Hard, where it's going to be at the highest risk, I still consider the reward so high that I just can't not player or keeper in turn 1. It's just so good that I just have to keep her. So pretty much I'll keep those into almost any hand. Failing those hands, I'll keep a Mountain Goat. You basically want to be doing something in the first 2 turns with any matchup. Whether you're into aggro, into mid-range, into control, you want to do something in your first 2 turns. So you want to keep a Zoe, a Spacey Sketcher, a Starry Scamp, a Mountain Goat. You want to keep those in your hand. Starry Scamp I will keep even without a way to trigger it sometimes. I've even kept Starry Scamp plus Mountain Goat, which is probably not a great keep to make, but since you'll be playing the Mountain Goat on turn 2. But as I mentioned, you want to be doing something in the first 2 turns, so if you can't find Mountain Goat, Spacey Sketcher, Zoe, keep a Starry Scamp. Like, hard casting on turn 2 is still fine. You can definitely do that and get away with it. Grand Plaza, I've kept it often, but there's definitely matchups where it's going to be less useful. I mean, other mid-range decks are going to be a pretty solid place for Grand Plaza, but against aggro it can be really good. It might not be. So whether I keep Grand Plaza depends mostly on what I have with it. If I'm missing a lot of early game action, I probably will pitch the Plaza to try and find more early game action, but definitely into things like control or mid-range, Grand Plaza starts to gain in value quite a bit. Against combo, it's probably bad because it's very slow, and you're not going to want to go slow in those matchups as much. But it's still worth keeping in a lot of hands. So into aggro, you're going to want something to do in the early game, and the more you can do in the early game, the better. Something like Spacey Sketcher plus Starry Scamp is going to be really good, because then you can outrace them potentially, but also you're going to have so many blockers to deal with their stuff. Other than that, you're going to want to combine it with some sort of life gain, whether that's a Starshaping, a Radiant Guardian, a Solari Sunforger. You're going to want something. A Priestess will work in a pinch, and you just hope you hit the Sisters, but you're going to want some sort of life gain. You're going to want early action paired with life gain. You don't have to worry about winning in this matchup. You just want to worry about stabilizing. If you can land a Radiant Guardian that's triggered, for example, and combine it with things like Concerted Strike or use Pale Cascade and Starshaping to keep it alive, that's going to basically guarantee a win against most aggro decks, because you're just going to run them out of cards, and you will have the better late game with things like Aurelion Sol, Starshaping, Eclipse Dragon. So if you can stabilize with something like that, you're going to win. So you don't have to focus on how you're going to win the matchup so much as how you're not going to lose the matchup. Against mid-range, you're going to want elusive threats. Those are going to be really good. Against a lot of mid-range decks, you can actually outrace them a fair amount of the time. So something like Spacey Sketcher plus Starry Scamp is really good there. Grand Plaza will be good for gaining you a lot of value. And then you can just count on having a better late game with stuff like Starshaping and Great Beyond. So what often will end up happening is I'll play something like Zoe, or I'll do the Spacey Sketcher Starry Scamp early start, and I'll punch a bunch of damage through and try to play a handful of Celestials, and then eventually late game I'll just be playing to match their units and stay alive, and then I'll slap a Great Beyond and just kill them, because most mid-range decks can't deal with the Great Beyond because of the fact that it has Spell Shield. So that's my rough blueprint of how I'll handle a mid-range matchup. So you want to look for some sort of early aggression, and things like Priestess are going to be a bit better here because Sisters is really good into most mid-range decks. Sunforger can work too. You don't want to keep too many high-cost cards, but you can definitely get away with it sometimes. If you can't find a really aggressive aggro package, something like Mountain Goat into Priestess and Sunforger will do you a lot of good. And then, like I said, you want some sort of blueprint for the late game. You can just count on drawing into Eclipse Dragon, Aurelion Sol, Starshaping, but keeping a Starshaping in your opener is not a bad idea because of how strong it is into the matchup. So that's really good into mid-range. Into control, you're going to want to go aggressive as possible. You're going to want that Spacey Sketcher Starry Scamp start. You're going to want Zoe getting off early. You're going to want a Mountain Goat, stuff like that to just run your opponent down as fast as possible. Starshaping's good as well. Any sort of Spell Shield threat is good. I'd almost never keep Aurelion Sol in an opener, but there's an argument for keeping it against control specifically. But generally speaking, you're going to try to force as much damage through as you can early so that your late game threats can kill in one hit, so that you can get in before they're able to actually remove it. So that's the big idea there. That's the basic mulligans for the deck. And that's the deck for this episode. You can find the deck code as well as the deck link in the description below if you want to try it out for yourself. Now let's jump into the matches. Alright, Lucian Hecarim Ephemerals. This ought to be interesting. Haven't actually played this matchup yet. I've played a handful with this deck, but not this matchup. Alright, Mountain Goat should be relatively good. I think I like one Starshaping, but not both. And then Pale Cascade's probably not great into here, because a lot of their stuff's going to have quick attack or die anyways, so buffing my units probably not going to be a big deal. Okay, I like this better. This seems pretty solid. We might actually pitch this Starshaping to Spacey Sketcher turn 1, because I think it is pretty important for us to get off to the running. Ooh, never mind. I will pitch Solari Priestess. She's not going to be great in this matchup. All of these are relatively good, but I think mostly what we're going to have to worry about with this is champions. So let's take the Serpent here and see what our opponent does. Okay, nothing. So we'll just play Serpent. A little unfortunate we didn't have Starry Scamp. This is definitely going to be the matchup where it would be better to have those free scamps early. But if we could just try to run our opponent down quickly, that could potentially work too. Again, the biggest thing we're worried about seeing is probably a Lucian. Lucian could be very problematic for us. Okay, interesting. Although I suppose Serpent is a great way to deal with Lucian, so that might solve it. A lot of combat spells, kind of more than I would personally hope for. We'll take the hit from this Lucian without a doubt. We're currently outracing our opponent, so there's no reason to throw something away here. Because we're going to do 4 next turn, in theory, while also killing Lucian, so... Ooh... Is that worth... I think that is. I think that's worth playing the Zoe. It's going to be hard for his deck to deal with Zoe. They don't have a lot of ways. It's basically just single combat, and we can use our single combat in response to save Zoe if we have to. Okay, so we'll do this, that, pull Lucian over here. That's a pretty big swing. We'll see how it goes. He must not have Senna, because if he did, I assume he would have played it there. So we lose our Serpent, but we get a huge chunk of damage through. Okay, he draws a card. That's not that bad at all. I don't think it's... Yeah, we don't have to cast anything. We can hold this. We're banking that mana, so there's no rush right now. Ooh, I do like that. Grand Plaza is good. The question is whether we can play it. Probably. I think the big thing here is we're going to save this Concerted Strike to deal with a Hecarim. There's a very good chance that that will be highly relevant in this matchup. That's a neat trick. Old trick, but a neat trick. Decent chance I'm going to use this super cool star chart. Are we at the chump block stage? Probably, because these aren't really going to do much from this point out. We might want to start using this gem just to boost the Zoe damage output. Although, I suppose Okay, I think we throw away Spacey Sketcher, but we're going to keep this Mountain Goat for the time being as a way to use Concerted Strike to protect Zoe. Or even single combat would work. Okay, yeah, we'll... Actually, do I even need to? No, I don't need to. If he's only going to deal 3 damage, we're okay with that. I don't need to block that. We can heal up almost all of this damage. Charger seems pretty good here. I think we're at the point we need units more than anything else. I think we're probably just going to start the next phase by gemming our Zoe and just swinging. Ooh. Maybe not. Sunforger is very good here, especially with Challenger. Now, this does risk our Zoe a bit more to things like single combat and all that, because now we can't cast things in response, but that's not the worst thing that could ever happen if she dies.
Slow down, will you?
Okay, well that does change things slightly. Now we're less willing to swing with everything. Could do this. I mean, is it worth it to take the trade with everything else? I don't think so. I think we just go for this. Get the 2 damage through, gain us a bunch of life. If he has single combat, that's unfortunate. Ooh, looks like he does. Yeah, that's highly unfortunate. We were definitely in the stage where we wanted this Zoe to live, but at least we have this Starshaping to find us a win condition. And we're definitely getting to the point that Great Beyond could just be lethal, so we've got that going for us. And we still have a lot of units to kill, like, a Hecarim this turn. Yeah. Let's see if he goes for it. We will definitely Concerted Strike to kill that. Without a doubt. I think we'll take a hit from Grizzled Ranger if he swings first. I don't think we're at the point that we want to trade the Spacey Sketcher quite yet. Okay, so no Hecarim this turn. That's kind of good. We could probably just take a huge hit and then Starshaping. That's reasonable. Depends on what happens here, though. If he plays something like Illusion, we might have to single combat, depending on how many things he's going to potentially lose this turn.
No place for the kind.
Oh, that's actually a pretty neat trick. Yeah, I'm okay with that. So we can take a big hit here. Do we... The question is, do we block this Grizzle Ranger on its first attack? I'm starting to think maybe we do. Because then we can trade Charger with Badger Bear. We can trade Sunforger with anything at this point. We do still want to keep a semi-decent board state. That's weird. That's really weird. Why did he just go to... He wastes the Grizzle Ranger attack there. Was he worried about me playing something? Okay, so we block here. Go down to 8. We want to be careful with our blocks at this point. Block here. Go down to 11, up to 16. That seems fine. And then we still keep 2 big things, so we can kill a Hecarim that lands. Because that's what we really don't want to have happen. We don't want our opponent to get a Hecarim. And we're still going to be able to undo most of the damage he does this turn. I mean, we're still going to be down 4, but that's not too bad. We're hoping for like a Great Beyond that we can eventually win with. Oh, Fading Memories. Interesting. Oh, he's going to get a lot of Shark Chariots, that's for sure. I mean, we can deal with that. It's possible we start using Concerted Strike in single combat very aggressively to remove his ephemerals so he can't get back all the chariots. Ooh, I was supposed to Starshaping. That was actually a huge punt. Oh, there's the Great Beyond. Is he lethal yet? I don't think so, right? Not quite yet. Hush is good, though. Definitely meant to Great Beyond last turn, though.
Alright, let's mess
Okay,
some folks
that's
up.
not a problem yet. We can always hush this Grizzled Ranger. Ooh, that's actually very good. Again, the problem being that this Great Beyond isn't lethal. That's what we really needed to see. There's a lot of risks. Okay, you know what? This is the better play. Take out the Ephemeral. But now we can't really... Okay, well we kind of have to Concerted Strike then. That's unfortunate. We wanted Radiant Guardian this turn. But we can't let this Hecarim attack. That's just not an option. Good news is if he has single combat, he can kill either one of these, but Pale Cascade will make that lethal either way. Okay, that's not bad at all. Yeah, we're fine with that. I mean, we don't want him to have more cards, but there's much, much worse things that could have happened there. The problem is that we're going to have to survive until this this Great Beyond gets another attack. Nothing I have can survive that hit, so yeah, we'll take it. The gang's sketchy, though.
I suppose.
Yeah, assume he swings with everything. So we block here, we block here, we go to 7. Ooh, wait a minute. Do we have lethal? I think we do, actually. With Great Beyond, we should have lethal next turn. And he shouldn't be able to do anything about it. I think we got there. I'm trying to think what he could have to answer it. He doesn't have a way to block elusives. This has Spell Shield. We play it plus Pale Cascade, and that's enough to kill him. Question is... Oh, okay, we don't even need the Pale Cascade. Okay, even better. Even better. So I can just gem and swing. And then if he does something in response, we can always Pale Cascade. Although there's not a lot of life gain that he has available to him, so we should be fine. He doesn't really have the right regions for life gain. Well, that's lethal. Does he have, like, Vile Feast plus Vengeance? Neither of those are very common in that deck. So I have a feeling he doesn't have an answer to this, but it is possible. I forgot the Grand Plaza was going to give it +1. Ah, there we go. Perfect. Not a bad game one. A little bit sketchy, a little bit close, but we got there, and that's what matters. Not bad at all. Whew. All right. Discard aggro by the look of it. So we're going to want a low curve here, and life gain can be pretty good too. It wouldn't be awful to have a way to deal with Jinx too, but okay. I mean, that's... So, Solari Priestess is not the best. That's not the, like, penultimate what I want here. But it can be good because it can find me the Sisters, it can find me Meteor Shower, either of which would be good here. Starshaping's huge life gain, that's great. Zoe into Mountain Goat, that's exactly the early curve I was hoping for. So I'm actually going to keep this opening grip. If I was to mulligan anything here, it would be this Priestess. Double Starshaping, not exactly what I want. But again, life gain into this matchup is just good. Let's see what my opponent has. Okay, they don't have Poro Cannon. That's the biggest thing that could have gone wrong for this hand. I mean, it's still good to have her because she has a chance to essentially block a Poro, and that can be life-saving, but obviously throwing away our Zoe and blocking with her is not the most ideal thing that could happen. Wow, really? No plays? That seems unlikely. I mean, alright. Well, I'll swing. Ooh, there we go. That's an answer for Jinx. Okay, we got a gem now. As well as we made our super cool star chart even cheaper.
It's
Yeah, that's not terrible. This, on the other hand, not great. What is worse? Traveler or the Warrior? I like the curve of Traveler here. Yeah, we'll take Traveler, I guess. We're gonna probably play fairly aggressive with our health here, or not aggressive with our health. We're gonna play fairly aggressive with our units here. Like, I'll probably throw away this Priestess, depending on what our opponent does. We're trying to keep our Zoe alive. That's basically the only thing we're actually trying to keep alive. If I can connect one more time, this star chart will be free. So if we can, like, star chart in a... Huh. That's weird. That was a very weird choice. Okay. Decisions. But yeah, as I was saying, we're hopefully going to try and get this star chart down to 0. That's the big thing we're looking for at this point. None of these are great, but none of them are terrible either. I guess we'll take Trickster maybe. We could win through this. This is an actual win condition for us potentially. Oh, the one of Eclipse Dragon. Do not see that often. We are a few years away from casting this, but okay, so that's just a 2-1.
Looking good, kid.
Does he have vision? That's the real threat here. Vision would be bad for us. We'll block with everything that's not Zoe. The good news here is that we can trade with everything that he's got, and that's actually probably worth doing, based on what discard aggro usually plays like. The downside is we kind of want something to die next turn, so we can get a Radiant Guardian.
This is awesome.
Interesting. Okay, well we'll do this and that. We won't block the Draven. I can take the hit from Draven. I've got a lot of health to play with, especially with double Starshapings, and potentially this Radiant Guardian coming. The thing here is I want Mountain Goat next turn so it can die. As a fair weather friend as that seems, I want that Mountain Goat to die so that I can play Radiant Guardian that turn. We'll see if my opponent lets me do that. Ah, he does have vision. Weird that he didn't swing with this spider. Okay. Well, good chance is things will die for my side next turn. Hopefully not the Zoe. Hopefully he's not holding like Whirling Death. Though, again, if we lose Zoe, it's not the end of the world. It really isn't. This Radiant Guardian's actually more important than Zoe is, so... Because we are actually set up in a pretty good spot where this Radiant Guardian can just take over the game. And based on how my opponent's been playing, it's pretty unlikely that they manage to empty this grip if they play a Jinx. It's possible, but it is unlikely. Now we're hoping this connects again so we can get super cool star chart as well. I don't think he's willing to trade Draven, but it is a possibility. There's no way he Whirling Deaths with this, right? Like, that's such a risk. Oh, okay, so he's... Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's fine. Yeah. We are perfectly good with that. That's everything working to the plan that we had. The big downside here is if he slaps a Jinx, that is kind of unfortunate for us. Yeah, okay. But, still, we have our Radiant Guardian.
You should try blinking sometime.
And we have this Concerted Strike, so that should be pretty good. And we'll just invoke this, see what we find. Serpent is great. Serpent is exactly what we were hoping for. We'll play that, just to have another blocker. He's close to leveling up, but not quite there. Okay. She is getting towards leveling up, but also not quite there. The big thing this next turn is that we are going to be looking for a Concerted Strike. It's going to be very hard for them to kill Radiant Guardian with just burn, but it will be fairly easy with quick attack and damage buffs and Whirling Deaths. So this Jinx does kind of need to die though. In fact, so much so that I might actually just gem and then Concerted Strike her. This Sunforger is actually really good. We've gotten a ton of life gain this game, so we've gotten very lucky. I will not contest that in the slightest bit. This has been an extraordinarily lucky hand. Okay, so we are going to go for this gem Concerted Strike plan. Jinx can't be allowed to live. Plain and simple, Jinx cannot be allowed to live. That's so problematic for what we are trying to do. I probably can't block with this Radiant Guardian or else I'm just going to lose her, which isn't the end of the world, but definitely not ideal.
Now we're cooking.
I'm on a roll.
Okay. Weird. So she levels up, sure, but why did... Well, okay, yeah, so Spinning Axe on Jinx is just bad, I think. Wait, what? Huh? Oh, she discarded survival skills. Oh! That does change things. That changes things quite a lot. The bright side is we now know we can block with Radiant Guardian on either of these. Okay, well, yeah, we'll just lose Serpent. Serpent is a good way to deal with this Jinx and kill her, but we are not really willing to make that trade. Again, the good news here is that we have this Starshaping, so we have backup plans, and we will just Sunforge it here.
Gifts from the sky.
I think we'll probably play the Trickster too here. There's an argument for leaving Pale Cascade plus Gem up, though. Now this deals, what, 1 tall enemies? Yeah, okay. Well, that's bad for the Zoe, but does this actually level... It doesn't actually level Zoe and then get the application, right? I don't think so. Still might be our better play. Because then we level the Zoe, so even if they can deal with Zoe, we're still going to get Zoe's benefits for the rest of the game. We're going to have to be close from here on out because of what this Super Mega Death Rocket does. Oof. That does change things. I kind of didn't think about burst speed discard. Nope. This keeps our Zoe alive. It's not the optimal that we wanted. Ooh, that's actually very good. Although she does die to Super Mega Death Rocket. Now, that's only the first time, right? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. No problem there. The only way our Radiant Guardian dies is if they throw away Jinx, which is obviously really, really good for us. Sunforger is going to be much easier for them to deal with. Yeah, anything can trade with a Sunforger, but that's also fine. This puts us back to full health, and our opponent has to block or they're dead. That's ideal, is what we call that. Oh, he's going to give both up. Wow, that I did not expect. Well, we go back to full health. And I can use this Spacey Sketcher to block here. I mean, they can kill the Spacey Sketcher, but it's still probably worth playing as a potential blocker, just in case. Ooh, it's actually tempting to take this Cosmic Inspiration, but I think Living Legends is probably the smarter pick. Now, do I want to discard anything? I mean, like, because Spacey Sketcher is almost certainly going to die. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. It can't die this turn. This will force him to do... Ooh, I love Moonsilver. Moonsilver is great. That is exactly what we want.
Zoe, I'm a serious artist now. I hit Dragonflies.
If we get the chance, playing this Trickster early on would be very good for us. What's Daybreak do? Next Dragon or Celestial unit costs almost nothing. That's also very good. What's he got? Okay.
No, it's your
So 2 unknowns and a Mega Death Rocket, which he's probably going to fire that off right now. If we are quite honest. Okay. So that does that, but that's fine. I don't think we're liable to die to damage out of hand. So I think we could play this Eclipse Dragon, which makes this cost next to nothing. Which means I could play this now and give flying to everything. Oh wait, that has Fury too now. Oh lord. Oh, if he doesn't have damage buff, he can't swing with Jinx anymore. That is sketchy. I can actually take the 8 though. That's the real crazy part. I can actually take the 8. Okay, so he did not realize what just happened. Yeah, I don't die this turn, so yeah, we're good. Pretty sure we have the win then. Oh, I should have blocked with this. That was a mistake. With it having Fury now, I definitely should have blocked with that. Yep, and there's the concession. Yep. Yeah, that was, we were in great shape there. There was nothing our opponent could have done. We had that without a doubt, because we had double Starshaping in hand. There is actually zero way that they untap and do enough damage to kill us the next turn while we're already attacking, because we all have elusives. They have no way to block. The elusives are lethal on board already. That, like, they have to respond. So we had that locked up in the bag, but Not bad. That was a little bit sketchy, but we had an insanely good draw. Like, I can't stress this enough. That draw was perfect for this matchup, so that was great. But yeah, on to the next. All right. FN Sejuani Tryndamere. So this is either the Field of Rush deck we were seeing for a bit, or this is like Scargrounds deck. I gotta be more aggressive than what we're seeing here. Single combat's not terrible. Neither is Concerted Strike. Okay, we're gonna mulligan that. We're gonna keep Concerted Strike because of the one-side nature of it. Ah, man, Space Sketcher would have been so good here. Oh well, Mountain Goat on turn 2. Depending on what my opponent plays.
These old eyes still see far and clear.
That's a little unfortunate.
Safeguard our homes.
Yeah. Yeah. Not really what we wanted there. Probably should have played Starry Scamp even, but... Do we play Plaza? Oh man, this would have been such a good hand if we had Spacey Sketcher. That's unfortunate. Yeah, we could take a hit from Ruthless Raider. They're pretty far from leveling Sejuani so far. We're at full health. Oh, there's the Sketcher. I mean, I can pitch this gem to her now. That's the good news. I can pitch gem. I think Crescent Strike's actually going to be low-key good in this matchup.
That's a pretty sparkle fly.
Do I play anything?
You can see the Demacian border from here.
I mean, there's a certain reason not to play Starry Scamps because they'll be even better next turn. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? No, this is a better play. So we'll play Sunforger first. Yeah, we'll play Sunforger first to get the life gain. Then we're gonna play all of our scamps, and we're just gonna rip apart our opponent's field. Okay. So I can deal with that.
Adults are boring.
That's easy enough. And we have this Pale Cascade as backup, so if they do any Frostbite shenanigans, we're still good. It's definitely worth trading with this Ancient Yeti with our Sunforger, though. Make no mistake about that. Because we do not want our opponent to have an Overwhelmer going into the next turn. And we're fine with this board state, keeping 2 of our units and them losing their full board. But we do have Pale Cascade that can be used to change the outcome. Okay, perfect. Back to full health. His board's wiped. He has no other mana for units yet, so we're in good shape. Ooh, and if a unit dies this turn, when a unit dies this turn, we'll get a Radiant Guardian out of it. Not bad at all. Decisions. Yeah, we'll just throw away her. My opponent is probably very confused right now. And now they're probably less confused. Let's see what they do. Okay. Oh, they're going for the Culling Strike. Got it. Yeah, that's not going to work either. Neat trick, though. I see what you did there, but yeah, that's not gonna happen. Let's see what my opponent plays. Get another nice little Daybreaker out here. Full cost Yeti. Decisions. So I can try to kill his stuff, or I can stun. I think stunning's our best choice here. Because then I can get a full, what is that, 12 damage through? And he can't do anything about it. And I'm going to go back to full health, so... And keeps my Concerted Strikes for the following turn. It's going to be hard to kill things with Concerted Strike, but... Ooh.
Who would face me? The barbarian king himself.
Let's let him make his move.
Itself can't stop me.
Okay. So, what can I do here? think the best I could do is just kill the Yeti, right? Strike an enemy, strike the Yeti. That'll kill the Yeti. I think it's left with only one blocker, or two blockers. I think we're still better off doing this and then playing Scamp. Wait a minute, so we're at 8 mana, so we can play this Great Beyond. Okay. I think that's worth it then.
Hey, Solari! Got a bit of moon rock for ya!
What are the downsides to playing Great Beyond first? I mean, this is lethal on its own. Yeah, no, we're just gonna go for it. He needs 2 removal to deal with it. He almost certainly has no flyers in his regions, so... Okay. Still lethal currently. Yeah, and then we just full swing, I think.
Cool.
He has to gain more life, which is doable. He can't trade with our entire board. And we can always use Concerted Strike to kill a leveled up Trinamir. So there is some risk to the way I just played this, but... Okay. That won't work yet. You got another one?
Intruders, stay back.
'Cause this has you... You need more than that. Yeah. Alright, well, there we go. Perfect. 3 in a row, not bad. Wasn't even sure how that matchup was going to go, but, I mean, we will definitely take that. Not bad at all. On to the next. Okay, this is definitely a Scargrounds deck. Vladimir Braum. Okay, so we're going to want to go quick here, right? And Hush should also be kind of good here. So Dragon's bad, Radiant Guardian's bad. We'll keep the Scamp, even though we don't have a way to enable it. Yeah, that's a little unfortunate. Ooh, there's the Hush. Okay, at least there's something. There's a decent chance they have an answer to Mount Goat this turn. Oh, that's so unfortunate. Okay. Well, maybe this is better. Pitch single combat. Single combat's probably going to be bad. Okay, Moon Silver. No, this can work. This can work. This can salvage this turn. Let's see what my opponent has. That's the big question. Because we can, in theory, play our entire hand here. I feel like he's got to have an answer, else he would have played something there. Man, is it worth emptying our hand? I think it is, but this is a very greedy play. I'm not sure I would do this 100% of the time. But it's 6 damage on turn 2. Alright, and he didn't have an answer. We're definitely going to need to start drawing gas, though, because this hand doesn't do much. That's not awful. That can essentially make gas in our hand. Avalanche. Okay, that's very tragic. I think we'll play Grand Plaza anyways. Nope, they had more control elements than I expected them to have. Ooh, I like Sisters here. I actually really like Sisters here. That elusive threat could be big for us. Okay. That's not too bad. Pitch this gem, see what we can find. Crescent Strike's actually decent chance good here, but so is Equinox. Take Crescent Strike, I think. Does he have anything to play this turn? No? So you'll take the 4? Alright. We have him to half health. Problem is, we're not doing much for a while. What is he playing? Braum? Do we just stun that? No. Not worth it. Not worth it. Ooh, Falling Comet is very good.
Daylight warms the heart and lights the way.
First we fight. Have you met my shield?
Okay. Well, that has its downsides, but he gets the Poro, but hoping he doesn't have much more than that. Another Avalanche would be very bad for us. That's what we are the most afraid of.
The light of my star warms the heavens.
What has he got? I mean, this Pale Cascade does allow us to kill Braum, in theory. But all we really have to do is keep this Silver Sister alive until our next attack, or through our next attack.
Oh, I can't wait.
Do we do this?
Descend upon them.
My
light shines.
I think we do this, right? We just keep these as blockers. I'm worried to go for the all-in Crescent Strike. I know we just got away with it earlier on in the other games, but it's such a greedy, greedy play, and he already has like another blocker, so it doesn't even guarantee the full swing. Is that worth fighting over? Might be. What else we got? Blood for blood. So that would have them trade. If I... Let's see. So if I hush that... So this deals 1 down to 4. Down to 4, but it gains +1. Right? Down to 4, then it takes 3. There's a lot of downsides that could happen to fighting over that. It might not be worth doing it. Yeah, it's not. It's not worth doing it. We need to keep Pale Cascade for keeping our Silver Sister alive and dealing more damage with our Silver Sister. This is our primary win condition right now.
Flames take you.
That's unfortunate. Although that will kill him eventually, I suppose.
Is that all?
He did just thin the margin that we need to kill him. Let's see what he does with Braum. We basically need to make sure his Braum can't attack this turn. This is what Crescent Strike is for. Oh! That is what Crescent Strike is for. It's for stopping a Braum and Vladimir attack. That was the #1 reasons that we took this Crescent Strike, was for this play right here. Does Silencing take away Frostbite? How do I not know the answer to that? I really should know the answer to that. So what can we do? We can block here, block here. Although if I block there, I'm going to take damage. There's not really a benefit to blocking there. I really wish we had been able to play the Mountain Goat before he attacked. 6, which drops us down to 12, and then we take another 7. So if I block like this, I'm gonna go to 11. Okay. Not ideal, but we kind of needed to buy a little bit of room. Alright, what do we find? Zoe's actually fairly good here. Well, now we have 2 elusive threats. So our opponent has to deal with both. And it depends on what way he attempts to deal with both. If he has Avalanche, he should just fast cast that. Because that's just really good for him. Like, that's all advantage. No loss, so... Like, he loses the 1 Ember Maiden, but then I lose everything, and he has a super lethal attack, so... I can't imagine that he's holding Avalanche. It wouldn't take this long to decide that. He's used a number of combat tricks. Deal 1 to an ally and an enemy 4 times. So I can't actually survive through that. Best I can do is hush that. So I guess that's what we'll do? Man, is that even worth doing at this point? We can hush it so we take less damage, and it dies. And I guess that's the best thing we can do. Oh wait, it won't die. Oh no! Tragedy strikes. But still, nothing we could have done to save Zoe in this situation, so... The question is, does he have a way to stop this from killing him? It actually does not require much from him. He needs a frostbite spell. Does he have it? Oh, okay. That won't do it. Do you have a frostbite spell? Oh, alright. Ooh, that was sketchy. That was so sketchy, but we got there. Oh, man. Whoo! I mean, we will take that, but that was... Yikes. Good example of why Scargrounds is actually a lot better than people thought it was going to be. It was kind of a underrated card, but it is very, very good, and that's why. That was such a hard board state to deal with, but hey, we got there, so on to the next. Alright, Plaza Scouts, probably. Well, this is definitely jinxing it, but here we are, Game 5. Can we get the first 5-0 in on-the-grind history, or no? Ugh, a hand like this is not a great way to get there, but I think I'll pitch 2 of these, and then we might actually keep this single combat. Sunforger can gain us a lot of ground that we've lost, and with the lifesteal, and it's just a giant body that can deal with most things our opponent plays. It's really a debate whether we keep single combat with so little else. I think we're going to try for it, but it's definitely a risk. We definitely didn't want to keep all of those Sunforgers, though. Well, I mean, Zoetron can work. Just have to hope our opponent doesn't have challengers, which they're probably a Plaza deck, so they probably do, but... Good chance I fire this next turn. The super cool star chart in an attempt to get like Serpent, depending on what he... Oh, okay, never mind. We'll play him out and go first. Yep. This looks like a turn 3 Plaza and nothing else. Hard to say, though. Number of possible plays. Obviously, he's thinking about it. Now that we deployed a real threat on this turn, he's thinking whether he has to probably... if I were to guess, maybe he's got like Brightsteel Protector and he's trying to decide whether he has to play it or not. Ooh, well, 2 can play at the Grand Plaza game, I guess. Oh, made our star chart nice and cheap. Alright. I'll match your Plaza. Ironically, he has more spell mana than us, which is not usually how this matchup is supposed to go. What's he got? If he plays Grizzle Ranger, I'll probably play Sunforger. Although, maybe not. Oh, wait, no, if he plays Grizzle Ranger, I'll just stun it. What am I thinking? Yeah, there's like 0 reason not to stun. No. Am I willing to stun that? I think so. I think we just stun whatever he plays. The question is, what else do we... I'm assuming he doesn't have a 1-drop, but there is some risk of that. What I'm most concerned is that he has something like, single combat that he's going to use to kill our Zoe. That would be unfortunate. If it was Grizzle Ranger, that would have been the best thing that could have happened this turn. Okay. Now, is it worth throwing away our Mountain Goat? I think it is. With this many single combats, I think it's worth doing so. And just hoping he doesn't have a second Binding Assault. Bright side is he shouldn't be able to kill both of our things, no matter what he has. Okay, well that kind of changes the outcome of that. Alright, well, we lose everything here. Oh, we're going to take a chunk, too. Yeah, that was a disastrous turn for us, wasn't it? Yeah, we played a little bit risky and paid the price for it. We lost our second Zoe as well, and we're going to take another 6 here. Right side is this Sunforger can gain us a bunch of that life back and kill Misfortune, so that's good at least. And we force him to waste a bunch of spells, so... Alright, play this. Probably worth star charting here, just to see what we can pull. We might be able to kill more things out of it. Got to gain back pretty much all of the life we lost, so that's pretty solid.
I've got your back.
Ooh, or we won't kill Misfortune, and that's highly unfortunate. Moon Silver's not horrible. Neither is Trickster. We'll take Moon Silver, I think.
Forge ahead.
And we will kill the scout unit. See if he can play a second one. Oh, alright, well that's good. We can still kill this misfortune, so that's where we want to be.
I ought to show you the sights of Bilgewater. The sights are fine. The smells, on the other hand.
Yeah, we can't allow that to live. Alright. Kill misfortune. Our unit lives through that at least. Dies to that. Which means we're gonna take another what, 7 damage? Down to 8. Is it worth going for single combat? I think it might be. To kill the Quinn. It saves us a lot of life if it works. Ooh, and it did. Now we're gonna take 6 down to 13. Yeah, that's in a much better spot than we were.
Protect and strike.
Do we Moonsilver this Starshaping? I think we might. Although we don't really need to do that now. That's a little unfortunate. Alright. Great Beyond can win us the game, but we are definitely in a bad spot right now. We might have to play a Radiant Guardian no benefit next turn. If we even live that long, to be honest. Depending on what he has here, he could just kill us in an open attack, even from 18 health. That makes it slightly less likely, but it's still possible. But he didn't have something like Cythria. Cythria would have been scary there. Oh, it's Bannerman. He's Banner and Plaza. Very greedy deck, but it's working for him right now. Okay. Sketcher's not bad. Yeah, we'll take the hit. Guess. So we'll play Sketcher, we'll pitch Gem, see what we can pull. Yeah, we want something that can block. Although Crescent Strike is pretty solid here. Yeah, maybe. That stops 2, whereas the other thing stops 1. Okay, Cythria is what we were worried about. So we will stun Cythria, stun the Challenger. Hopefully he still attacks, because we want to get this Radiant Guardian. This is definitely scary where we're at right now. Even with a Radiant Guardian coming down.
Honor guide me.
Fall to our standard.
But we'll definitely block here.
Hold still.
Take 3, down to 12.
Virtue guides me.
The sad part is I don't think we can attack with this Radiant Guardian next turn. We would like to, but I don't think that's a realistic position to be in. Well, if I can only play 1, I gotta play this. This is weird, but I may actually have to kill Cythria with Great Beyond. That's risky, though. If he has a riposte, we just lose our Great Beyond. But that would potentially allow us to attack with the Radiant Guardian. Alright, this is greedy, but we'll go for it. Hopefully he doesn't have Relentless Pursuit, but it's possible. This Hush could buy us a lot. That's what we're banking on. We're banking on Hush buying us a lot. His board state isn't lethal yet, but he has 9 mana. Oh, okay. Alright. We're getting lucky so far. We'll play the Zoe without a doubt. Just to have another blocker.
Slow down, will you?
Yeah, we'll play it.
Never loses because Zoe makes the rules.
See what he does here. We're in an interesting position right now. And so is our opponent. I mean, ideally we want to hush this Cythria, but we also want to hush Grizzle Ranger so he doesn't get the Badger Bear.
A symbol worth fighting.
Okay. That's interesting. Do we play Radiant Guardian just to block? Are we at that point yet? So he swings and he pulls everything off. We take 11, which isn't lethal. But if he swings twice, swings with these and then those,
Here we go.
that is lethal. Oh, he's going for killing that. Okay. So our ideal here is to silence that. Oh, why would you do that? Oh, because he didn't have lethal yet with it. Well, that's unfortunate for our opponent. Oh, we're going to gain a bit of life and then get this other Radiant Guardian down. Well, we're in decent shape. Big problem is if he's holding Relentless Pursuit. But if he is, he either drew it this turn or he really missed an opportunity last turn. We were dead to a Relentless Pursuit, timed well last turn. So far, nothing he has can kill Great Beyond yet, and that's the big thing that we're worried about. Okay, do that. Brings us to full health.
In the name of our land.
Okay, what am I most worried about? I can't lose this Great Beyond, so it can't block Cythria, so I have to block one of these.
Stay back!
And this way all the challengers go. Does he have the Relentless Pursuit? Actually, even if he does, that's not lethal. Oh, here we are. Do we have it? We do, and that's the 5-0! First time in On the Grind history! I mean, I've gone 5-0 with a deck before, but I've never done it while filming. Not in a row, like... Just for a glimpse behind the curtain, these games are played in a row. That's why I include this end cap here, where you see where the rank goes. I mean, I've had spaces of like 6, 7 wins in a row, but I've never had 5 while filming. I always drop 1 game, so that's incredible. Especially considering not another glimpse behind the curtain. Sorry for anyone who wanted to see this, but that deck we just played against was what I was going to be playing today. I made a last-minute swap because I saw this deck appearing a lot in the tops of the leaderboards. I was seeing a number of people playing this list, so I was like, hey, let's give it a try. And then I started playing it, and I was like, wow, this deck is really, really good, because you have super aggressive starts with Starry Scamp and all that, and then you have really good late game too. It's incredible, but I guess I'll save that more for the wrap-up. But I just wanted to say, I thought about playing Plaza Scouts, not with Plaza and Bannerman. That's a little too greedy, a little too slow. But that was the deck I was going to play, and I swapped for this deck, so beating it for the last game in the first 5-0 in filming for this show, that's not bad at all. Not bad at all. Let's talk a little bit more in the wrap up though. All right, so how did we do in our matches? Well, as I just celebrated quite heavily, we went 5-0, and that's the first time I've done it while recording. I've had long stretches of wins. I've done multiple games in a row, but every time I go to film, I try to use a stretch of 5 games in a row. And while filming, I've never had 5 in a row as wins. So I try to give a decent picture of the deck when I make these episodes by taking the best light for the deck. If I'm pulling towards a 50% win rate, I'll use like a 3-2 if I can find a good one. Sometimes I'll do like a 4-1 even though the deck's closer to a 50% win rate, and I'll usually talk about that in the wrap-up, but sometimes I'll do that if that stretch of 5 games produces the best matchups or a degree of matchups, shall we say. Like today we had 5 unique decks. We had 2 Freljord Noxus decks, but they were unique decks. I would say those 2 decks are very, very different because one's trying to ramp into these huge Freljord threats and the other one's trying to use Scargrounds with a bunch of other utility creatures that benefit from it. So that's 5 very different games to watch. And I will sometimes use a slightly different stretch of games that's not as representative of the overall win rate if I think it gives better matches to view and a more complete picture of matches. But then I'll usually say in the wrap-up where the win rate's at. This deck is actually just really, really good. A lot of people are playing it right now. First off, though, I want to say thanks to, I'm pretty sure it was Rattling Bones' list that I lifted from the leaderboards to do this. as I mentioned, I was actually considering Plaza Scouts for this week's episode. Bannerman has a special place in my heart. My phone case is actually Vanguard Bannerman right now. Although Plaza Scouts I don't think should be running Bannerman. I think running Plaza plus Bannerman is very greedy, and I think you can do a bit better. So my list isn't running Bannerman, but that was what I was going to play. I played a bunch of normals with it just to prep the list and get ready for it. And then I checked the leaderboards, and Plaza Scout's I think in the top 20, but there's only like one person playing it. Now I saw a lot of Go Hard, at least when I first checked earlier today, it was like the first 3 decks were all Go Hard midrange. And then I saw some really interesting stuff like Karma Lee Sin, I've seen that. And then I saw a number of decks that were Demacia Targon, Aurelion Sol. And I was like, interesting, is this back to the Invoke deck, or is this something new? So I looked at the list, and Alan Skew has been playing this, so I wasn't completely unaware of it, but I was curious if it was that version of the deck, or if it was going to be something more traditional to like the old list. And so I saw a lot of people were playing this deck at the top, and I like Rattling Bones' list a little bit better than Alan Skew's, because Alan Skew's a bit top-heavy, but I mentioned some of the changes in the Flex Spots section of the video, so that's a better place to go if you want to see all of those differences. I'm pretty happy with where this list is. I was very hesitant at first because I don't like seeing a number of 2-ofs. Usually I prefer something a bit more consistent, so like the 2 of Concerted, the 2 of Radiant Guardian, and the 1 of Eclipse Dragon just seems very weird to me, but all of them played their own part in tonight's games, so I think they all deserve to be where they are. I think they're all really good cards. I could definitely see why some people would go more Eclipse Dragons. I could see why you would go Judgment, but I personally prefer Concerted Strike to Judgment. It's a bit harder to pull off the Judgment. It definitely can work in this deck. We have a lot of great spell shield threats, particularly playing something like the Great Beyond, and then Judgmenting with that could save us in a number of places where we were a bit scared, like that Bannerman turn. If we had Judgment, that would be really, really good, but we didn't even have Concerted Strike, so we probably wouldn't have drawn it. And just in general, Concerted Strike's really, really strong. Judgment is a lot more fragile. You kind of need a lot more to pull it off. And while a number of decks are removal light, as we saw today, I still would be nervous using Judgment on anything that doesn't have Spell Shield. So I get why some people would run it. I'm definitely fine not running it. I really like the Radiant Guardians. They saved us in that Bannerman game, and they were really, really strong in the aggro game. I really like what that card does for this deck. I can definitely see avoiding to have 3 of them, because there's a number of times it's just bad in hand. Even in that last game, we were holding at one point, and it was not a good card to be holding at that moment. It was just like, we don't have any way to trigger the lifesteal, and without it, it's just a vanilla 4/5 for 5 mana, which is not very good, not very cost effective. But we were able to get value out of it, and it ended up doing so much for us. So it was really, really solid, did great things for us, and I definitely like its inclusion in the list. So I highly recommend that, stand by that. But this is a very good deck. I am surprised by this. Now, to be fair, I have fairly limited experience playing it against Go Hard, so that's an important matchup, and I'm not entirely sure how it would go. But with things like Great Beyond, I think you can be reasonably safe in that matchup, as reasonably as you can be. I think it's very possible to get a lot of damage in early against that list, and then finish with something like the Great Beyond, using the Starshapings to buy yourself enough time to get there. And the Radiant Guardians will also, as well as Eclipse Dragons, survive through a Pack Your Bags, as long as you've managed to trigger the Radiant Guardian. So there's a lot of places in which their cards match up well, so I think that matchup's probably not bad, but I haven't played it enough to be comfortable with it. I spent most of today playing a variety of normals before jumping into rank, just to really get comfortable on the deck. Played a ton of matchups like Draven Ezreal and all that, so I'm relatively comfortable with where this is, and a big reason why I chose this over Plaza Scouts as well isn't just because of the presence on the leaderboard. It's that Fiora has appeared a lot lately. I've run into it a lot when I was playing Plaza Scouts. I ran into 2 different Fiora decks, and I think I ran into 1, maybe 2 with this as well when I was prepping it. And the thing is, I just hate losing to Fiora. I've been very vocal on my dislike for Fiora as a card. It's cool to have alternate wins. She's just a little bit too consistent, and a lot of the decks that include her, it's like the DT one is not as egregious of this, but like the DI Fiora Shen list can be a mid-range deck, it could be a Fiora combo deck, and if you deal with one, you can't deal with the other. So I really love that this deck has things like Hush that can very actively fight Fiora. And that's a big reason for me choosing this list over Plaza Scouts. This is a better way of dealing with it. And I just hate losing to Fiora, because when you lose to Fiora, it always feels like there was nothing you could do. Whether that's true or not, it always feels like that. It feels like they always had all the answers and there was nothing you could do. And Hush very much counters that. So I love any deck where I can get Hush in to deal with things like that. And this deck is just an incredibly good deck for that. I think this deck is highly at risk. Although Riot is not patching the game, so be what it is. Chances are there's not a balance patch coming to next month, so you can still grind this deck for a while, if that's the case. But I do think it will probably be hit semi-heavily. I think the fact that it runs Grand Plaza, which is a very high-risk card, along with Go Hard, both cards are what I would consider high-risk for nerfs, especially since they're taking this long to do a balance patch. That means they have ample time and thus exactly zero excuses for not actually touching those cards, and I think there's a good chance that anything they do to these cards will basically destroy them. So that could unmake the whole deck, though I'm not convinced that Grand Plaza is the only reason this deck works. The combo of Starry Scamp with Spacey Sketcher is extremely powerful and can be very, very potent, and I have always preached at how good Starshaping is in the late game and for late game threats. So that will always be strong, but there's definitely a lot of advantage that comes out of Grand Plaza in this deck, especially with things like the Starry Scamp turn, where you saw that one where I had Spacey Sketcher out and I played Plaza and I had that mana and I didn't do anything with it, banked it, and went into Sunforger Starry Scamp with Plaza out. You saw how powerful that was. It's definitely really powerful, and I think it's going to be hard for them to balance that card in a way that would still be good in a deck like this and still be playable. I think it's going to be very hard for them to do that. I think the same is true for Go Hard. I think both are cards where it's basically going to be either really good or really bad. We'll see what Riot does with it. They might find a way to make it work, but I do think that this deck is a little bit high risk, because I do think a number of cards in it are very likely to get nerfed whenever we do get a balance patch. So just be aware of that, but I do think it's a very good deck to grind. I think it can hold its own against basically all of the meta. Especially since, again, like the Star Shaping into like Great Beyond or other late game win condition is so powerful and so hard to deal with for so many decks. So I think that's really, really strong. And the fact that we don't even have to give up much for that, because we still have a super aggressive early game. If we can find Starry Scamp plus Spacey Sketcher, we are in the money, like without a doubt. And as long as we can at least have something like Mountain Goat or even just a raw Starry Sketcher on turn 2, means we shouldn't get run over by aggro. And believe it, like this is part of the reason that I went with Rattling Bones' list, is that he has a lot of ways to make up for aggro. Yes, it's kind of heavy on the curve, but it can very quickly wrestle the game back into our control with things like Radiant Guardian and Star Shaping. And you can hit Sisters as well, which makes it even more easy to do so. And things like Concerted Strike just keep adding on ways to gain life. So you should be decent against aggro. Against other mid-range decks, we have things like Hush. We have the elusive threats that they don't have. We have the usual stuff like Concerted Strike and Single Combat to fight them off. I think that's probably the matchup where you should be the most scared. That Plaza Scouts game could have gone so poorly for us at so many points, but we managed to make it. Same with Scargrounds. But then against Control, it's the spell-shielded threats that we can get that are so potent, and we also combine that with an extremely aggressive early game. That means in most cases, by the time we land a Great Beyond, it should be lethal. And many cases, we can play a ton of Celestials before we even get to it, which makes it even more potent. So I think most matchups are just good. I think that's just how it is. I mean, I'm definitely going to have to play the deck even more, and I definitely look forward to giving you guys an update on this deck for Meta Check next week, because there is a lot more to be done with this. But this is a deck I think I'm going to have fun playing for a while, because it has a lot of ways to deal with the things I like the least in the game. Things like Fiora, and things like... I mean, Go Hard I actually don't mind that bad, but I am tired of seeing it. So, yeah, this is all-around great deck. I loved it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it as well. I definitely suggest checking it out. I'm very impressed with it. I knew a number of people were preaching about it, talking about it. I saw Alan Skew's videos on it and all that, and I just hadn't really given it the opportunity to impress me that I should have. And yeah, it was well worth a trip. I'm glad I swapped at the last minute. So, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe for more videos just like